thing. Go in there and have somebody just like freeze it. It's there, click. And
No, I like it in front of
I know,
people.
but it,
I just like
it
gives
jumps,
them to sign up.
No, it's good, but it jumps around and then it covers things you're looking for. I could feel her pain when she described
So
it.
a software guy charges you $2,000 to remove it, you will change your mind.
What's
No.
is this working, or do I have to have the I have the red light, or do I need these lights?
We're live, okay.
All right. Okay, we're gonna call them order the select board meeting February 11th, 2025 here in the fire station at 6:30 p.m. We have a quorum, and we will start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do we have any amendments to the agenda? I don't have any that I'm proposing for tonight. So does anyone else have any amendment to the agenda?
Can we just have a conversation really quick about the agenda?
Sure.
So I feel like I need to understand the order of priority because this, I get that we need to get through all of it, but this feels like way more than one's meeting worth of material. And so is the budget the priority tonight, or are the ordinance because I feel like the priority has to go first because I don't realistically think we're getting through all this tonight.
So unfortunately, it's all priority. We are scheduled to. We need to have the draft ordinance language ready on after our February 25th meeting because the warrant language has to be available 14 days prior to the town, the public hearing posted by the planning board, and they have to put that notification in print, and so they're planning to do that March 12th, and so they need to have that language. The language has to be available. They can put out the article that's in the newspaper saying the public hearing on warrant article language, but the language doesn't need to be included in the newspaper, but it needs to be available the day that goes out. So that has to be done. We're scheduled to do these three tonight, and then the Historic District Commission, or the Historic District Commission language changes at our February 25th meeting. So whatever we don't finish tonight for ordinances would have to be added to that meeting that night, and we also will have the lawyer there and the Historic District Commission there. And so,
Should we start with the budget, or should we start
now that I've
with
said
the
it out loud, I
ordinance?
think that starting with the budget first, and then doing as much ordinance stuff as we can until we call it for the night would probably be better. So we can move D up to above A, so the budget first. So do we have a motion to move that?
So moved.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposition? Seeing none. We'll put that here. Public comment. There's no one from the public here, so we'll move past that. And I haven't received any submitted public comment either. So let's move into the budget, Jerry.
Yeah, so you all have an updated budget with the updated revenue increases and decreases
Yeah.
that you got last week.
Yes.
All right, the only other things that are reflected in this budget, if you look at your supplemental sheet, prior to this budget, the grants matching fund, I had 6,000 in there, but since we've closed the books, and if you look at your fund balances, we really only need 3,152 to bring the grant matching funds up to an even 30,000, which is where we like that to be. All right, so that's also reflected in this budget with transfers out. So if you go to the page 18 of the budget, the transfers out are now 595,652. Okay?
Page 18.
Yeah.
That's transfers out of
Oh, I
the
see.
reserves.
Yes, because that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
Right, so it just basically went down by 6,000 minus that number.
Yeah.
to reflect it, and it didn't really change the overall, tax levy by reducing the fund balance down to 470, so that's where that's at now, so.
I have some highlighted notes, and I'm just gonna pull out everything that we have in front of us. I just already highlighted it that I wanted to go over. So most of us were at the budget committee meeting last night, but I just wanted to highlight again, if folks hadn't, who are watching, hadn't seen it, we talked a little bit about some recommendations pertaining to estimated revenues that came in from our accountant. And sorry, I had the highlighted sheet of where those changes were. Can you just go over, Jerry, the change, which it was the increasing of,
Can I-
did you highlight it in here?
No, I didn't highlight it in.
I had it somewhere, sorry.
I can just pull up the email.
Yeah, can you pull up that email, Heather?
And you might have it too, Joe, right in your computer.
What's that, the email?
Yeah, that I sent last week with the changes.
Let me see.
Mark's email?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
here it
he-
is,
he
yeah,
had
right here.
Adjusted the state revenue sharing to 925.
Yep. And then the cable franchise fee to 51,000.
I think that's updated even more in this sheet.
All right, so we'll just go through. Let's go to
Yeah.
13, line 13, 6,300.
Page,
6.
thank you. 13,6,300.
So that revenue sharing has been updated to $925,000. And that was reflective of the state economist projections that were released after we made our first estimate there. And now we're gonna go to line 14,6460, which is on page 7.
So that went up.
Yeah, it went up, yep.
While we're right here, though, didn't he adjust homestead?
Down, I think,
That's,
to 260.
yeah, sorry. Homestead exemption was brought down to 260, based off of, looking at getting feedback from the, budget committee and looking at estimating the fact that some of that, percentage that we can claim is going to decrease. And there was new construction last year, but only 11 new buildings, and so that he felt like that was a more conservative, a better estimate. And then we're gonna go to line 14,6460, the cable franchise fees. And he changed those to 51,000, and all he did was he looked at what the quarterly estimates or quarterly statements were last year, and adopted those. Figured out what it was on an average quarter, and then multiplied that by 6 quarters to get the 2018 estimate. The 18-month estimate, sorry. Some feedback we got from the budget committee was they wanted to know if we knew how many people were no longer using cable, so if we could lower that or adjust that. I don't have that information. I'm comfortable with that
Yeah.
estimate.
Let me just add that the actual for 24, that 37,462 in cable franchise fees. If you divide that by 4, it actually comes to 9,365. So he's reduced it to 8,500 times 6, which gives it, so he is taking into
Oh yeah, so
consideration.
9,365 times 6 would be 56,190. So we're now estimating 51,000, so
So we are reducing.
5,000 and change
Yep.
less.
Yeah, yes, just wanted to clarify that.
Ambulance fees, line 14-6470. That is going up to 175,000. That's based off of the 117,780 in actuals for 24, and he thinks that the 175,000 would be a better estimate for 18 months. So 1.5 times the 117,780 brings us to 176,670. And so that's a slight underestimate and that's just operating on the assumption that there's no increased call volume. And so we are seeing increased call volume, so that number could be a little bit higher, but I think that that's a pretty safe estimate at 175,000. Line 16, 6910, which is on page, which page are we at here?
It's on 7.
7, sorry. These aren't in page order. So page 7, line 166900.
Should be 19.
Sorry, I said that wrong. 196910. That's interest income, which we are estimating now at 200,000. He's seeing an interest income in 2024 of 112,000, and that was for about 6 months at the higher interest rate. And he's also seeing that interest rates will probably drop some, but probably not like a huge amount over the next 18 months. Probably not below 3%. So he thinks moving this up to 200,000 would be fine. That was some feedback that the budget committee gave him our first night of presentation. So moving that from 100,000 to 200,000. Those were all the increase estimates. Now the decrease estimates, we're going to go back earlier in the presentation here. Other excise tax, which is 11-6105.
Page 6.
Page 6. Thank you, Josh. Was lowered to $6,000. So actual was 4,000. This is just 1.5 times the actual from 2024. Code enforcement, 126215. We are just bringing it to 65,000, which is just 1.5 times the 2024 actuals. And then homestead exemption, line 136305.
We talked about that already.
We already talked about that one, made that adjustment. And then interest on property tax, which is line 19-6900. Gotta pull up the page number here. 7. That has been changed to $52,000, which is just the 2024 actuals multiplied by 1.5. All total, this means an overall increase of $123,400. Then Mark's recommendation is if we wanted to maintain a 3.5% tax increase, it would mean a budgeted use of fund balance of roughly $471,600. And so we've got a little bit of adjustment here, but we're on our front sheet here. It says use of fund balance at $470,000 even. You know, I wanted to provide some thoughts on this, and I know some of this might be a little bit of repeating for our acute listeners, but someone from the public reached out today and just had suggested that we vocalize again very clearly our thought process on the fund balance use. Personally, I see the fund balance as something that we can use to mitigate tax increases. You know, when we look at our budget, our municipal budget is really, let me pull it up, not including the school, is somewhere in the neighborhood of a little over $4 million. What page are we on here? Let me find it. And the vast majority of our budget is the school budget and county tax, which we don't have control over to the same extent that we have control over our municipal budget here. And so the challenge is if there's big increases in those, we can't absorb $1 million increase in a $4 million budget. We'd have to drop expenses 25% to break even, right? And so I think that the fund balance use is good because it helps us stabilize the cost increase to taxpayers every year. And I would rather see us try to do a flat-lined rate of increase in that 3.5% range, as opposed to using additional fund balance this year to bring that down to a 2% change, and then not having and using that fund balance at a faster rate. Because right now, based off of my calculations, at the rate that the select board is proposing using the fund balance, will be about 5 years of this usage rate before we bring that reserve down to a level that is the bottom, where we would need to maintain all of it for cash flow purposes. So that gives us 5 years of this steady, flatlined target of that 3.5% range. I think that's a really good way to do it. In those years, we're also going to see that we're going to have debt services come off, and so that can be something that we can take into consideration for fund balance use or putting money towards capital. And we're also potentially has opportunities to figure out more revenue generating opportunities, which I know is important to this board. And so I think that having that 5-year cushion of a pretty evenly use of it is a better way to use it than to fluctuate during these relatively economically stable times, which is the point that Mark had made. Like, if it's stable, maybe don't use a lot of it. If you're having a recession or a depression, that's when you say, okay, maybe we do use a lot of it. And so that's why I'm more comfortable, even with these adjustments, just decreasing the amount of fund balance we use rather than increasing the fund balance use to offset any proposed tax change. That's my pitch, but I just wanted to hear your all's thoughts as we take into consideration the comments from the budget committee and stuff like that.
Is that 5 years based on the use of the 470, or is that on the higher amount that was initially used?
That was on the annualized amount of the initial 599, which put us, for that 18 month, which put us in the 380 range annually.
So
And
by using 470, you're getting an extra year or so.
A little bit more liquidity, yeah. And because I heard last night, that was a big thing of, well, what are we going to do when this fund balance runs out? And so I think it's important for us to consider that use. And I like the idea of giving us 5 years of fund balance use as opposed to a 2 or 3 years to get a short-term lower tax rate.
Before these changes were made, we were all comfortable with the bigger number coming out. And, the proposal on the table at the budget committee was keep the bigger number, even with these changes. And the tax rate would move lower than 3.5. I don't know exactly what it would be. And I think economic times are hard for people right now. And going into the unknowns that people may feel about the 18-month budget, the change, and looking at these numbers, I don't think it's unreasonable to say, take the bigger number out of the funding and lower the rate from 3.5 to something lower. I don't know what it would be. I don't know if it would hit the mark of what the budget committee said, but I don't think it's unreasonable to do that if we were prepared to take that much out 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, for me, I was prepared to take that much out because I like the idea of keeping that tax change in line with inflation across the consumer price index for the Northeast. Whereas now, if we take that larger number out, we're actually decreasing taxes below the percentage that inflation would be that natural increase. Because we did bring our municipal budget down to minus 5.5%. The other thing, though, about using that number, that we might need to get back up to that number because new numbers have come out of the school, and so this budget includes a 6.8% increase in education. And after our first budget committee meeting 2 days later, I looked at the school budget, and they were proposing a 7.62% increase. So we're going to have to adjust that number here. And when you're going from a 6.8 to a 7.62% increase on the school budget, which is $6 million here, that works out to like another $655,000 total on that budget times 1.5. That's getting up closer to $1 million increase for the 18-month budget. And so I'd be looking personally to say, let's take that school budget increase and see how that looks, and then look at our fund balance use. Do you follow what I'm saying? So what is this half of the table think?
I mean, to me, it's a pay me now, pay me later type thing. So I don't disagree. I mean, the year was, I'll say, pretty good in the market. I'd say almost leave it at 3.5% now and save that money for later when things aren't so rosy. I think everybody did well the last number of years, and I don't know. I know there's a few that, you know, it hurts no matter what. You know, so just, you know, I'd rather burn slower and use that for, you know, save it off a little bit longer.
Yeah, well-
let
Not
this go.
everybody's in the market.
Right.
What's that?
Not everyone's in the market.
Oh, I get that, but, you know, I mean, I'm not sure it's gonna get much better.
Yeah.
So for anybody moving forward here, so it's gonna be hard, and I get it, for the next 18 months, this is gonna show up. I could be swayed either way, but I'd say leave it at 3.5 and leave the fund balance where it is. What would be the amount we'd have to take out of the fund balance?
We have to make a slight adjustment if we want to bump that school number up.
But I didn't
This
calculate
this
it.
470 right now.
What would it become if we went to 2.5%?
They didn't calculate it either. Last
Okay.
night they just
Right.
they
I
just.
don't
I know they did,
Yeah.
I could probably figure it out here. while I'm sitting
But
here,
to your point, Joe, and to your point, Deb, I think that this could be the opportunity to give the taxpayers kind of that decision too, because if we say we want to go with a 3.5% target, and then the budget committee goes with a 2.5% target, then you can just have a very healthy and kind debate amongst the legislative body at the town hall meeting, and then they can decide, I'd rather do the slow burn versus I'd rather get a little bit more savings now, and that gives people that option. Because if we come in with the same number and we have slightly different ideologies, it's kind of putting everyone as this is your only option. And I think that it's, while we want to be close with our budget committee, we don't have to be exactly that. We can give people that option, because maybe everyone in Durham feels like they had a really good year and they're comfortable. Maybe folks don't, and we can just let them make that choice. Because we're ultimately pretty dang close to each other personally, is what I'm thinking. So,
I mean, to get to 2.5%, you're talking about another, over 18 months, 350,000,
Something like that. no?
which I think is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, if you've got a $12 million budget there, what's 1% of that?
I don't know.
120?
yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're gonna throw another 120 out.
Per-
Which would put it, but you
It's,
roughly.
it's 600, basically.
right.
Yeah,
Sorry, I said,
yeah.
you're right, I said it wrong. Yes, it's a total of 600 is what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is right about where we were 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Right.
So,
So,
I mean, that's not a bad number either, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My philosophy wasn't backing into a 2.5, it was what did we have 2 weeks ago, and what if we left that number as is
Yeah.
with these adjustments?
Which was just-
Yeah.
And then if it's 2.8, okay,
Yeah.
it's
Right.
2.8.
Yeah.
Which is
But it's a good compromise.
which is fair, because my point was if we used what we had originally suggested, it gave us about 5 years of liquidity with that fund balance. In my mind, if we're upping revenues, we could buy a little bit more liquidity if we just say because you're saying, and this is just a thought, notice, like, we said that we were fine with 3.5% and we were fine with a $600,000 fund balance use. Well, now we don't need to use $600,000 to get to 3.5%, or we can use the $600,000 to get below 3.5%. And I'm just of the policy mindset that I'd rather target the 3.5%. It's totally fair if the board decides we want to vote to target the $600,000 fund balance use. I'm just vocalizing where I stand on it, you know.
And I think, the future is higher revenues for us with things that we have on the plate that we want to do. We have so much going on here now that, we haven't been able to attack those things. But we start dealing with back taxes
Yeah.
and all that other business.
I do subscribe a little bit more to a bird in the hand's better than two in the bush, though. And like, I'd rather be in a situation where our revenues got a lot better, and then we're making the adjustment the next year, because I just don't want to see us get burned and say, well, these interest rates could go higher, and maybe we could get even more, and then all of a sudden we have a shortcoming. And so that's just where I sit. Heather, I saw your hand.
The education line, I think, is a huge variable. And so it's hard to have this conversation not knowing what we're doing or where the education number is gonna be. If we're gonna use 7.6 for a number, on the education estimate, that I think changes the fund balance use for me. If we're gonna stick, you know what I'm saying? Like that's a huge variable. So I don't feel like I can have a conversation about making a fund balance number until I know what number we're using for the education estimate.
So the superintendent's,
Except we can't wait that long, right?
Yeah.
Right.
We gotta make that decision.
we have to
Well,
shoot
right,
for
and this
something.
is reflective of the 6.8.
Right, and so I agree with you, and I think we should be using something closer to what's being recommended by the school board. And this is, again, why we're doing this 18-month budget, so when we do this again in 2026, we'll have a better idea of what's happening.
Yeah,
But I agree, and I would use the higher amount now, taking that into consideration, because, you know, it's coming, and that's, you know, a 7.8 increase for 12 months, and there's gonna be a 6-month increase, that's probably gonna be more. And so, I think putting that money aside in the budget now for that, having that extra money, to address that concern, which should be raised at the town meeting, is better than, we'll deal with it when it comes up. And we'll address how we're gonna raise that extra money. Because then we're talking about, having a special town meeting, doing something, when we can plan for it now. So I would agree using that, you know, the round 600,000 or whatever we wanna use, what we used 2 weeks ago, which I can't remember off the top of my head. I think, to me, although I agree with you about, but for this school budget, I would support what you're saying 100%. But I think the school budget is a variable for me, that would make me go the other way.
so what, I got the superintendent's proposed budget pulled up right here. And so we have budgeted, we have the FY 2024 actual at, 6,088,292 is what our actual is at. And so let me do some quick math here. Actually, do I have the notes on how we get that 9.7 number? I believe he added 6.8% to the 6,088,000 and then multiplied by 1.5.
So you have 6 months of the current year, which we know, and then the estimated for the full year is that number. And the school board chair was in my office 2 weeks ago, and she asked what we were using, and I told her 6.8, and she thought that was gonna be pretty close.
Yeah,
And then if you use a 6.8 and the school budget goes up, you can use fund balance to offset it. If you go up higher and then the school budget is down, that's a different story, and I think Mark explains it in his.
That's a good point. The number I'm seeing right here in their proposed budget for Durham, I see $635,739.08 for the Durham contribution in the Freeport.
Million?
Sorry, that's the difference. It's that's the difference between the assessed and proposed, but I'm seeing a proposed of $6,993,155
For 1 year.
for 1 year. So let me put
Say
that
it
number.
again.
$6,993,135.
I mean, the difference, we're talking about $100,000, $70,000, $65,000 difference if I'm doing the math in my head.
Yeah.
But
What? Isn't it 900,000? Didn't you say
So-
6.9 million?
so
It's
when I do the math, it's
6.993.
7.08, and that's for the whole 18 months. It's 9.84 million.
So
And so we're talking about less than 100,000 extra.
When-
But that's best case scenario, and with the county
Yeah,
estimate,
$76,000 difference.
well, when I put their proposed budget of $6,993,135, and then you multiply that by 1.5 to come up with a rough estimate for 18 months, that puts us at $10,489,702. And
So
we're
that's,
budgeting.
then that's more than the 7.6%.
We're budgeting 9 point. Well, that's the seven. That's if we just built Wint off of their proposed right now for 18 and multiplied that by 1.5.
Their proposed budget
Their-
versus
yeah.
Because ours is 6,088,000.
No.
And theirs, yes.
That was the FY24
Oh,
actuals.
I
Our
see.
proposed budget for the 18 months is 9,750.
Right.
What I'm saying is their proposed budget right now sits at 6 million. The impact for us would be 6,993,135.
Yeah.
If you
times
multiply
1.5.
that by 1.5,
Yeah,
that brings you to
But we
10,000,000.
But we don't do that, right?
We're not- I'm not
The
saying we're
6,088,000 is what we're paying for the next, we're paying half of that for the next 6 months. Is that what you said?
Yeah, we're paying, that's,
So, okay, so we owe half of that, right, in the fixed education cost
Yeah.
on page 2.
yeah,
And then that recommended budget,
right.
which will get us less than the 10 million.
Oh, because what you're saying, if we
Yes.
take that recommended budget and do about,
So
multiply
you
that
take
by
that,
0.75.
no, you take that number
Yeah.
that you just said and add 3,044,146.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
put that in 6,993,155. And then give me that other number, 3,000,000.
44,000. Look, one of the judges just told me I went to law school because I couldn't do math because I was so off. So
So,
if I'm wrong,
so that brings
What are you
us,
doing with that number? Sorry, what were you
This
doing with
is
that number?
estimating
Add-
and
but
forecasting.
this is estimated forecast, we're doing the best we can.
no,
That-
add-
But based
add the
off of Josh's math right there,
44,000 to that.
which is half of that 6,000,000, and then the proposed budget, that puts it at a $10,037,155
146.
expense for
146.
the 18-month needs. And we're currently budgeting about
10,037,000.
300,000
So
or 200 and
minus
160.
9,750,000 from that, and tell me what the difference in the number is.
It's about 76, I think.
Um,
66.
Yeah, it should be 76.
76.
Okay,
76.
so, I mean, that's really close.
Right.
No, it's 276.
Oh,
yeah
yeah.
minus 9.
Can you hand me that?
5.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it's $287,000 roughly that it could increase on top.
which
of
is
this
really
number.
close to our 470,
Yeah,
plus that
280,000.
difference is that brings us up to that 600.
So it
whatever
sounds
that
like
we were at
what
last
I'm
week.
hearing from the board is
No, that would still leave us, so, it's about half of it, half the increase.
well, no, because that number plus 470.
Right. The
If
470
we have to
that we're
absorb that,
saying,
that's 470 plus the
Plus the
286.
287,
which
right.
puts
Right.
us close to what we were at 2 weeks ago for the fund balance use.
What puts us at
No, that's.
$757,000 for fund balance use.
Yeah.
Was it,
$157,000.
It was
difference.
600 and something last week.
right,
2 weeks
6,
ago.
I can't remember what it was.
I don't know what the number, I didn't bring my piece of paper from last week.
I have the email, I can't remember. It's in my car. I could
It
run
puts
and
an
get it.
annualized use of around $504,000 for fund balance use.
Versus 470, what we're at right now.
If I'm doing my math right. But I guess what I'm hearing here is that folks are suggesting that we increase education to 7.6% and then accept that difference via use of fund balance. To keep that 3.5% target.
You could read the bottom paragraph of what Mark said.
Right here.
Might help you, I don't know if you got the second part of it.
Yeah, I do right here.
Read
So.
read the bottom part.
Yeah. So Mark said the only big item that would significantly affect the budget would be the RSU comes in for their budget. If it's close to 6.8%, we have estimated, then we're fine. But if it's significantly less than 6.8%, it could affect what the target tax increase would be. You know, so if it came in $300,000 less than what we budgeted for, he said he would not suggest compensating by simply adjusting the budgeted use of funds just to keep the tax levy at 3.5%. That's if the school budget came in less. It sounds like he says here,
If it came in more.
yeah, if the end result of the actual use of fund balance is normally lower than budgeted use of fund balance, it gives that extra. So if the school budget's too low, I'm trying to find where he said if the school budget goes up. So he's saying that ideally for FY26, using somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000 of the fund balance is a fair target.
So, I think what he's saying is, if you use more fund balance now, and that school budget goes up, you're gonna use even more fund balance to make it up.
Got it.
So what he's saying
So
is,
you could be depleting it much quicker.
so I think what Mark is saying is leave this, would recommend leave this as is, and once those actuals come in, then
Right.
use the fund balance to come up with that difference.
Right.
Which
it
I,
goes up.
which if it goes up, which I'm inclined to.
But when is that determined? That's
That's-
after town
It's,
meeting.
it gets pretty close to town meeting, right?
It's, June is the vote, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, second week of June.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to.
And so that, I don't
To
know,
hone in.
I don't know
Okay,
the
so
historic
then, can
trend
I just
of,
ask a process question about that? So we have town meeting in April. We're gonna do this in April, but if the school budget thing doesn't happen until June, how can we then go back and use fund balance to cover that difference? If it's 2 months after town
Well,
meeting?
you have to use something to cover it, you just don't have that number, so you use the fund balance to cover it.
or we'd have to increase the tax levy.
And we have authority to do that.
Yeah, you'll have to adjust it using fund balance, otherwise you'll
Well,
have to
or,
raise taxes. for
or
it.
the other, on the other
Can't
flip,
do that.
on the flip side of that though, is we budget for the use of fund balance now, and then if we don't need it, it just gets rolled over at the end of next year into, cause it's unused.
That's correct. Back into the fund balance.
Like this year, we used less of the fund balance than we had budgeted for, and that gets rolled back into the fund balance.
Yeah, if you certainly don't use it, it'll roll back in.
Or-
So
or
it-
you gain
so-
more revenues, you,
Or we gain more revenues or whatever,
Then
and so we can create a budget here, and then say use $600,000 of the fund balance. But then if we don't end up using it all because revenues are increased and the school budget doesn't actually come in at that, that money gets rolled back into undesignated funds at the end of the year, or into the fund balance at the end of the year, correct?
If you don't use it.
If we don't use it.
Okay, so I think what you're saying is increase the fund balance usage to cover the increased potential for the school budget and not increase it in a way to reduce the tax from 3.5 and then keep it at 3.5 taxes.
Yeah, so right now, if we were to adopt.
I
this
think
bu-
if that makes sense, I think that makes sense if we're adjusting for the school budget,
So
unknown.
that's the toughest part about this cycle is that it's unknown, because to Mark's point, like if we were able to make an adjustment before the school budget came in, like you said, Heather, but we can't. The only way we could do it is if we came this as a budget and then the school budget came over, we would actually just have to increase we'd have to pick a big number on the tax levy that we set to come up with that difference, correct? So when we look at the three numbers, we'd have, like the three proposed mill rates, we'd have to go with the bigger one just to come up with the
How much she
difference.
does the commitment, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so right now, if we budget for more fund balance use, and then we are covered, we can then just not use that fund balance in the next, all that fund balance in the next year. Is what I'm thinking. But we also don't know if that's exactly going to be at 7.6%, because I don't know if that proposal is going to get adjusted or what. I don't know how steady that number is.
The school budget. number,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
And this is just the perpetual issue of trying to
We're
predict
kind
your biggest expense a month and commit to it a month before it's set, you know?
It's like throwing a dart at it.
Yeah.
You're throwing a dart at a little scale.
My thing is that when we used the fund balance last year, we put that out, the voters voted to approve that fund balance. Our revenues were increased from what we thought, right? So there wasn't this situation where the voters didn't know that that's not the amount of money that we were potentially going to use. That was upfront ahead of time, right?
Well, 'cause-
And then there was some that was left over because we had increased revenues, and all of that just goes back into the fund balance. I think doing it in the opposite direction, for me, I don't love that approach. I mean, I'll have a conversation and listen to people's arguments on it, but I want voters to know, not worst case scenario, but sort of, right? I would rather have people know, this is the amount of money that you're voting, that you're willing to use out of the fund balance in the worst case scenario based on the school budget, right? And then if we don't have to use it, it goes back in the way that it did this last year, versus not allocating enough out of the fund balance in front of the voters to vote on, and then us having to do that after the fact. I just don't love that approach.
So what I would like to do, if this, to that approach, is just increase our estimate for the school budget to 7.6%.
That was what I said like 20 minutes
And I'm saying increase that, and then use the necessary fund balance to get back to 3.5% increase. So you'd have to have Mark make those adjustments for us, but that's what I would like to see. Because if it's going up more, what's that?
If you wrote, I won't write anything down.
Yeah,
till I
so-
vote.
I want to make them.
How do other people feel about that? I mean, I think we're all saying the same
Because
thing.
what we're getting at right now is this budget, if we adopt this right now, and the school budget goes up, then we have to increase the amount of taxes that we raise. Because this is the budget, and then we have to set the mill rate. And we set the mill rate after we know the school budget's been approved, and we're setting the mill rate with all the assessed value and everything like that. If we're gonna be short, that's where we have to increase that right there to accommodate for it. I would rather be in a situation where we're budgeting closer to that actual that we might get, and so I'd rather see us just increase this school education cost to 7, whatever this. You use the same equation to come up with the year and a half, but input 7.6% increase rather than 6.8% increase. Figure out what that does to the rest of the budget, and then use fund balance to get back to 3.5%, our target percentage, and then go with that. That's what I think. Does
Jerry,
everyone
you
follow
got
what I'm
things
saying?
that I want to hear what Jerry has to say.
Isn't that contrary to what he's saying in his email though?
So
Because if you go up to 7.6 and they come down 6.8 and you've used 600 in fund balance, you're gonna deplete your fund balance big.
Well,
Not,
we're not using the fund balance
we
in that
won't-
situation.
Yeah, you wouldn't use it.
You wouldn't take it out.
We wouldn't
take it out.
be using that.
well, it's part of your budget, so it's gonna affect the
But if the,
what he's saying here is that if we over budget the use of fund balance, and then the school budget comes in much lower, and so we say, okay, well, we're not going to use the fund balance, and we're just going to continue to shoot for that lower, a lower tax rate, then we're using very little of the fund balance,
Yeah.
and that right now we're deliberately trying to slowly spend down that fund balance. So what my understanding from what Mark is saying here is, if we pick our percentage at somewhere between 3 and 5%, and we're saying 3.5. If we pick that, we then use the fund balance to get us to that 3.5% because we're deliberately trying to spend the fund balance down slowly, as opposed to if it comes in under, saying, oh, well, it came in under, we just won't use fund balance. You follow what I'm saying?
the other option would be to phrase an article about using the fund balance, once we have the final figures, using the fund balance to equal a 3.5% increase in the mill rate.
Right.
And that way, we're sticking with that and we're using the appropriate amount of the fund balance.
Can you do that? Does it have to not be like a concrete number? It could be a percentage in the warrant
I think
article?
that we just need to create a budget with a listed use of fund balance and go from there, as opposed to trying to say, let's change it after the fact personally. And so if our goal, his recommendation here is that we spend at least over 300,000 of the fund balance. If our goal is to do that, we should budget somewhere between a $300,000 and $600,000 use of the fund balance, with the understanding that our revenues have been outpacing our expectations and we're not fully using it all. Because if we just budget to use $300,000 of the fund balance, and then our revenues are up $50,000, we end up only using $250,000 of the fund balance because our revenues were up. So if our target is to actually get $300,000 to $600,000 of that fund balance out, then we need to budget for a higher number. Is what he's saying.
Josh, what were you gonna say?
I do think we could do that. I don't think I agree with Joe. It's not the right way to do it. But I think we budget the 7.6% increase, and we go back to the $600,000 in the fund balance.
Do you want to target?
or $650,000, and that way we're hedging our bets.
Do you want to target a fund balance number or spend the fund balance to get us back down to 3.5% after
Well-
budgeting for the higher blood school number.
Except if they come, I mean, the problem is right now we don't know. And so come April 5th, I think it is, the town meeting, right? There will be a better idea of what the proposed budget's gonna be, although it won't be the final budget, right? So at town meeting, we might have a better idea. But I think for now, we go up to the 7.6% and increase the fund balance use to 650. And that way, if they come down, we're in good shape. If they stay at the 7.6%, our mill rate's going up a little more than we wanted. Or at that point in April, we could readjust the numbers at the town meeting. I think that takes into account what we're trying to do, and it's the example of why we're doing this 18-month budget. I mean, in a nutshell, I was talking to somebody the other day who has like 3 businesses, and thought we were crazy for not already being there. And I said, my head's going crazy with the math, so I agree. But this is the example. I mean, save this meeting and replay it for why it's so important to do this. But I think, or maybe not a 7.6% increase, maybe do like a 7.3% increase, or 7.2, which is in the middle. And then go up a little bit on the go up to 600,000. I'm okay with either one, I think, but I think it needs to be in there with the increase, because I think the school budget's going up. I don't think they're coming down almost a full % in their budget.
I hear what you're saying, and I just did the math, and I think I've got the solution here. So, I wrote them down. Right now, this number,
Kind of over your shoulder.
yeah, right now this number, and I'll read it out loud. We're budgeting $9,750,000. We know that the FY 2024 actual was $6,088,292, and we know we have half of that bill to pay as part of this 8-month budget, because that's already, we know that that's fixed. That is reflective of that. If you divide that number by 2, it's $3,044,146. The new proposed budget that I just saw with a 7.62% increase is $6,993,155. Everyone follow? And so if we add that number to the 6 months that we're already paying, that gives us a total estimated budget cost, which is $10,037,301. We're currently budgeting $9,750,000. The difference between this new number of $10,037,301 minus $9,750,000 is $287,301. So if we wanted to absorb the entire cost of that school increase that we're talking about at 7.62% increase, we would need to use an extra $287,301 of the fund balance, or a total of $757,301 of the fund balance in that 18-month budget
To stay at the 3.5%.
to stay at 3.5%.
So,
And because what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to absorb two massive increases in the budget in our small municipal budget. Deb and I sat in the GP Cog meeting the other day. This is the same frustration that all the select boards in our community have, is that they say, we're getting hounded to decrease taxes when we only control 1/3 of the expenses. And how do we absorb that huge increase with our small budget, especially when we know that 88% of our costs are already fixed? So 757,301 annualized is $504,867,000 of budget use.
500.
And $4,867,000. That's annualized. So this number seems big, but I think that seems reasonable. But I want to make that proposal, but I want Mark to double check those.
He's
those numbers.
available if we
I-
So-
run that by him.
I like that math, and when you annualize it, I think we're
Yeah.
at the 500,000,
Yeah.
which is where we wanna be.
Yeah.
It's in the middle of the range Mark gave us.
Yeah.
But I also challenge you, since you're the chair, that before the town meeting in April, you're going to have a better, a full conversation with the, school board chair and get a better idea of what the numbers are looking like at that point, so that we can come in with that and change it. Because
Decrease it, hopefully.
Or decrease it.
Yeah.
And because I think, I agree, this is completely out of our control, we can lobby all we want, and, they're not gonna listen to us, right? They have what they need to do, so,
And so I agree with you, and this is where I think that we're budgeting for that worst case scenario, knowing that if we can reduce that number as we get closer if necessary. I'll call you in a second, Heather, real quick, I'm just reviewing what Mark is saying, and he said a budgeted use of fund balance for FY '26 of over 300,000 and somewhere between 400 and 600,000. So if we're saying FY '26, if we're annualizing this and it works out to that annualized number of 504,000, and his recommendation for FY '26 is to shoot to use between 300 and 600,000. We're right in the middle there, and so I do want him to check my numbers
Let me just see if he's,
on that. Heather,
I was just, when Jerry said that he was available, I didn't know if he was available right now, so that we
He
can
might
like
be.
wrap this up.
can we move on to another
Yeah.
topic, and come back
Yeah.
to this,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah,
he's
Good
gonna watch
idea.
our video and say, "Whoa, what were you guys just talking about?"
I think he's, lucky for us, he's smart enough to figure out what's going on.
were there other budget stuff that needed to talk about?
So the only thing I was gonna say is that, the budget committee did not make recommendations last night. They said that they wanted to, they wanted us to hear what they were saying, but they didn't make us any recommendations. And they were uncomfortable, they said, making recommendations because we adjusted the expected revenues to be in line with what they had recommended, but that they had prepared for budget recommendations that didn't include their expected revenues to be the increased numbers. And so they want a clean copy of what we have here at the end of our meeting for their review at their next meeting, and then they're gonna make recommendations off of that budget. And then they're gonna wait until the warrant language comes out at the end of the month, and then they're gonna meet to make recommendations on the warrant language after. So,
One thing, can I just add something to that? One thing that I was trying to get a clear understanding of and asked for clarity about was because they were making reductions to certain items. But then by the end of the conversation, it didn't appear as though they were talking about they wanted to use the fund balance to make up for those reductions, not raise those amounts. And I did ask the question, but they didn't make it was really one strong voice that was making that argument and not a collective board as a whole that came back with that.
and I don't know, and so my thought process is, the way it works is we create our budget, and then they make a recommendation for or against each warrant article, and if they're against our warrant article, they come up with their number. It's up for them to figure that out, because we don't need to be going back and forth of checking their number and deciding if we agree with it and coming back.
Right.
Like, we've put a lot of work into this. These are the numbers we're comfortable with. If they're saying that they want to cut $36,000 out of the general government fund, that's their prerogative. And like their chair said last night, it will be their job to present that to community against whatever recommendation we have. And so we'll just handle that as it is. But I think that we need to we're confident in this budget, and them wanting to cut, let's say, the HR person doesn't change my opinion about our budget.
No, not for me
And
either.
so
What
that's-
I was
but I'm
trying
just
to
saying-
get clarity on was if they were actually trying to reduce the budget by that amount,
They
or
didn't-
if they were trying to make up the difference, have all the services and everything stay the same, but use the fund balance to make up the cost
That's their
difference.
prerogative.
I
Yeah.
understand that. I'm saying that was what I didn't have a clear understanding of coming out of that meeting, is where they were with that.
Yeah, and
That's what I was.
and I know some of them vocalized having a target tax increase of 2.5%, and they vocalized that as maybe doing some cuts and then maybe using some more fund balance. So I don't know what that's for them to decide and make the recommendation on. You know, I saw that they were some people were making the recommendation of specific like line items in here, but this obviously doesn't show up to be voted on line by
Right.
line. It's gonna be just like it was last year, you know, the general government. And so if they go in there and they say they wanna make a cut, it's up for them if they wanna say why. And if they make the cut, then it's up for the town staff, for Jerry to figure out if that's what gets voted on, it's up for Jerry to figure out where it comes out of that budget. And so their intent might be to take the training budget away at $5,000, but if that's out of the town, out of the general government budget line, maybe the town manager takes that out of something else. That it still meets their line, so.
So this is Mark. You ready?
Sure.
Hey, Mark, thanks for calling. Can you hear it?
Yep, I
All
can
right.
hear you.
Okay, the board has some questions. I'm not sure who's gonna lead it, but here we go. All right.
Just be aware I'm driving. I might go through some dead zones, so I might lose you, but I'll call back. if I
Okay,
lose you.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm gonna hand that over to
Yeah,
Josh.
yeah.
Hey Mark, it's Joe Roy here.
Hi, Joe.
What we were just looking at here is that we saw that the school came out with a new estimate for Durham's contribution to the school budget being up 7.62%, and we're trying to figure out how to incorporate that into this budget and then use the appropriate amount of fund balance to try to get back down to that 3.5% increase in taxes.
Yep.
And kind of and I'll just real quick explain what we did is kind of our back of the napkin math is we took their new number of 6.99 million and then we added that to half of the 2024 actual of 3.04 million to come up with a total estimate of 10,037,301. And then we subtracted the current estimate of 9,750,000 to come up with a difference of 287,301, which would be a proposed fund balance use of $757,301 over the 18-month budget.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so that does make sense, and that would be annualized around 504,000.
Correct. It would still be a reduction compared to FY24's budget because on a 12 month basis.
Okay, yeah, and because when we looked at your email, it mentioned a target of between 300,000 and 600,000 for FY26. And so if we're looking at 504,000 for FY26 and then another 300 or 200,000 and change for the first 6 months of the FY20 FY26, we'd be sitting good. So that number doesn't seem off to you.
No, and it may seem like, oh well, geez, that's a lot, but really over 18 months, you're probably not. First of all, you're probably not going to use all of that budgeted use of fund balance.
Yeah.
And secondly, it is over 18 months, so I wouldn't be particularly worried about it. No.
Okay, perfect. Do we have any other questions for Mark while we got him on the phone?
No, because we haven't made him upset, so let's.
Yeah. All right. Well, Mark, we really appreciate you taking this call
we do.
unexpectly, and
Yeah, no, that's fine.
we'll
Let me know if you have any other questions. I watched the budget committee meeting from last night, and
Yep.
so I provided Jerry
You're-
with some responses.
perfect. Awesome. All right. Have a good rest of your night, Mark. Thank you.
All right, you too.
Mike.
Bye.
So one thing I would just like to say about what he was saying about how it's less. So in 2024, the budgeted amount that we were budgeting to use was $668,000, and what we're annualized budgeting would be $504,000.
Yeah.
So we're still using less than what we had originally budgeted
Yeah.
in 2024.
We budgeted
So I feel
668.
I feel really comfortable with this.
Okay. Do you want to?
as long as one of us, and by that I'm pointing to the two of you,
I'm gonna make a motion.
you know, we don't drop the ball and reach out,
Yeah.
closer
No,
closer to the town meeting.
We'll
But
reach
I
out.
would, I would make a motion that we increase the school budget to a 18-month total of $10,037,301, and we increase the use of fund balance by $287,301 to a total of $757,301.
Second. All right, second from Heather. Do we have any additional discussion? So that works out to being an annualized use of fund balance at $504,867.33, which absorbs the increased cost of the school budget while still maintaining a 3.5% projected impact on your tax bill. Any? Yeah, our tax bill. Trust me, I pay mine too. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? All right. Do I have a vote? All in favor? Any opposition? All right. Seeing none. And I'm comfortable with all the rest of our numbers, and I'm not inclined to change anything in here.
No, because then it will
As
just
far
change
as-
what we just did.
Yeah, as
so.
far as I'm concerned, the select board budget is complete, and we will try to take a look at it again at the end of the month to see if there's more info, or after the next school board meeting, to see if we can tighten that number up. Just my expectation is that they're probably not going down, and so I'd rather budget for it. So
Can I just see your work
my
there?
hands,
Yeah.
my scratching back here.
And Jerry, thank you, and Mark and everybody. I think, you know, people are gonna complain that it's an increase, but I don't know what to cut.
Right.
Because we have, I think, you know, it's almost minimal services. I think you need more help in the office. I think there's more things that can be done. I think cutting anything from this budget is only gonna harm the community and the people who are paying the taxes. So, I commend you
Yeah.
for this. I think you guys did a great job, and I think,
Well, to your point, Josh, you know, we hear what everyone's saying, but when people vote on services that they want provided last year, we're budgeting to provide the same services. And sometimes you need to make changes to make sure you meet that service level. If we go any lower anywhere on this budget, we are now proposing to offer less services than we did last year. And while we have people who come give us comments at our budget, through our budget process, we have to take those voters' action of voting by a very large margin to approve into consideration. And so if the budget committee wants to come up with a different number and present a smaller number, it then goes in the hands of the voters to decide their fate on that. And like Joe said, they can choose the pay me now or pay me later approach, and that's a fair option, whatever they want. We can give them those options. This is a lot of work for switching over to fiscal year,
Yeah.
and every single headache I've had during this budget process, I've thought to myself, this is one that's going away next year because we'll have a known number, you know? I share in that frustration that the budget committee said, it seems like something changes every day, and it's like, things are coming in every day, you know?
I also just want to raise a point that not only are we providing the same level of service, but we're filling gaps in areas of risk with
Yeah.
the new HR consultant, you know, Jerry, that you've arranged.
Legal services.
The legal service call when you need her thing. I mean, we're doing things that are long overdue.
Right.
And
IT
that needs-
protection.
And the right security protection with our IT and our record keeping of our residents' private information. That is a major thing, and it, you know, some people are raising the point like, oh, the town manager should have all those skills. You know, we heard it kind of that undertone of that message. The leader is required, I mean, and you did just that. You need to bring to the table areas of major risk, and we need to handle it. And not everybody knows everything, you know what I mean? So you did a great job bringing the issue up about the HR piece, which I completely understand. And not only that, the security of the record keeping and the, you know, the tools that we use, all of that. So I really
Yeah.
commend you for all of that work, and
Yeah.
I want that to be on record.
Yeah,
that the-
absolutely.
That the residents are clear that we're becoming a better business
Right.
for the town with what we're doing here.
Appreciate that,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
An
The
ounce
other
of
thing-
prevention is
the other
worth
thing that I
a
just wanna
pound of cure, so.
Speak about is like the whole text thing, the text messaging, text my gov, whatever it is, whatever it's called, right? That all really stemmed from when we had the major flooding and we had so many roads that were closed. And we were, and a resident, right, started a Facebook post to try to keep it all in one spot of what roads were closed, what roads were open, right? That's not an official form of communication from the town. Residents don't always have internet when we're in a natural disaster type situation. And the texting thing, while it's a very small, minimal part of the budget, right? That's a service that is, I feel, an essential service in terms of those types of natural disasters or those types of things. So while that's just one small piece of all the things that Debbie just spoke about, right? That embedded cost, I get the like embedded cost conversation. However, that arose out of complaints that you received at the town office about not being able to effectively communicate with residents in those emergency type situations.
Right, good point.
So every time that we're voting as a board on things that you're bringing to us in the budget cycle, there's justification behind that. And if there wasn't, we wouldn't vote to approve it, and we do, because you're justifying those costs to us and what those benefits are to the residents.
Yes.
And I just think that that gets overlooked when we're just nitpicking at the numbers, which that's part of what the budget is, right? But we lose those justifications of where those numbers come from when we're just reviewing the number.
Right. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oftentimes managers, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
That's right.
And
That's
who you
right.
can bring to the table. to-
Right.
I mean, this phone call was a perfect example of
Right.
it,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, and
Yes,
I'll
you will.
continue to do it,
Yeah.
as long as you're gonna continue to have me.
Yes.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah. And text Durham alerts to 91896. And if everyone signs up, we can take the button off the website and get it out of everyone's eyes. That's my, once we get to 1,500 people signed up, we'll
Okay.
remove that. How's that sound?
And just one more thing, what makes my job easier? Staff.
Yes.
I mean, we have great staff.
Yeah.
So,
Alrighty.
Next item.
Next item, we're going to draft amendments on, we finished D here, so we're gonna move to draft amendments on resource protection. The only thing I gotta say about that is, Jerry, once you get those, numbers adjusted, the chair of the budget committee did request that we send the budget committee a clean version of everything. I know that 4 or so people requested a print version, but if I told them, I think it's in the budget to print 9 copies and have them ready at the office for
Yep.
whoever wants it on top of the email, so. Alrighty, let's move into draft amendments. So we are scheduled to talk tonight about the draft resource protection, changes, the revised draft for the BESS standard, or BESS, and contract zoning, with the historic district being on our next meeting. So, I hope we can get through at least 2 of these, because anything, like Joe said about pay me now versus pay me later, take my time now or take my time later. So let's see how we can proceed, but I think that we'll start off here with draft amendments for resource protection, which should be the shorter of our proposed drafts here tonight to review. So if we recall, since the Resource Protection District was redrawn and adopted, new information came to light. A citizen had requested additional surveys to be done on their property by staff from the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. And based off of the result of that survey, they determined that an occurrence of a rare species that was impacting the Durham Resource Protection District could be removed due to a lack of continued presence and a lack of continued observations, and the condition of the habitat and how it's changed over the last 20 years. So I think that this shows a really good strength of this process working and updating to the benefit of residents as new data comes forward. And this is a reflection of that change here, which is removing the co-occurrence map from the resource protection district. So if we recall, there are several criteria that were used to determine whether something met the resource protection district, and a co-occurrence map, which had a weighted value for different natural resources, was put into there. And if the weighted value for each area was over 6, then it was considered resource protection, and this is removing that from resource protection. And it's also just making sure that we're making proper adjustments on some impacted lots that were made non-compliant. And you know, what we got from information from people is, if the select board is making a lot, usually you would come up with those exemptions before you make something non-compliant. And so this is us making those corrections to bring those lots into compliance by giving them some buffered area that is not subject to resource protection. Do we have any questions? As you guys can, or as you all, can imagine, I was intimately familiar with all of these discussions along the whole way, and I have to say, I think the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board did an excellent job with a lot of public input, a lot of feedback from professionals, and a lot of consideration for the landowners in this town to come up with a really great solution to some issues that were brought up. So I know we all reviewed this in advance, but I can give folks a little bit of time here to take a look at it if we want, and then we can discuss further.
My only thing is that I have the comp plan pulled up right now. The removing of the language that says co-occurrence, 6+, right? I feel like the comp plan says, and I could be wrong, that part of it, if we're making ordinance changes that have to align with the comp plan, I feel like the comp plan specifically says co-occurrence of 6+. That's my only concern.
Can you read that section when you find it?
I will.
So I can answer that, Josh. Are we getting rid of it or updating the map? The co-occurrence, the only area in town that the co-occurrence model provided resource protection of that wasn't overlapped by another reason for resource protection was in the part of town where there was a large buffer placed around a known occurrence of a rare turtle. Once that turtle was determined not to be there and that the habitat condition isn't actually provided, and they think that it was just an observation that might have been an update. And so the advisement that the town planner got from Maine Department Inland Fisheries and Wildlife was to remove the co-occurrence model from this resource protection mapping because it was only relevant in one spot and now no longer relevant. That's
in that paragraph out, where we just updated the date of the map,
yeah.
right? So we didn't get rid of it from there. We just,
It says designated have multiple natural.
am I reading this wrong?
Which one are you reading?
Paragraph F, the rating of 6 or more, it's still there. It's just, it doesn't apply
It doesn't anymore.
apply because there's nothing in the 2024 map. So we're not getting rid of it.
Sorry,
We're
sorry.
updating the map.
We're not-
Which
we're getting-
then
yeah.
means that there's no occurrence of it in town, so it doesn't show up
Getting,
on the map.
I missed. We're getting rid of the 2018 map
Right.
model, and now it's the
Yes.
2024 model.
Right.
That's what was recommended to remove. Thank you
Yes.
for catching that.
So the 6, because it does say 6 in the comp
S-
plan.
Yeah,
Right,
if
so-
you read paragraph F.
The
B-
words are gonna stay there, so that in
Yeah.
the future, if there was a co-occurrence of 6 or more, and the map would change because the language is still there.
But the town would then have to go have a separate vote to adopt a
Right.
new map.
Right.
So
Yes.
what it's saying here, the only thing being changed is in section 2.3, subsection B, 2F. It says lands designated as having multiple resources as determined by supplemental map natural resource co-occurrence, Durham, January 2018. The 2018 has been stricken and replaced with 2024.
With a rating.
With a rating of 6 or more attributes valued and designated on the zoning map.
Got it.
And since that 2024 one is removing that rare turtle occurrence, the recommendation was to remove the 2018 map and use the 2024
Got
map.
it. I'm okay with this then.
And the other
Thank
part
you.
here is just making sure that there was a really comprehensive system used to figure out how to remove buffered areas around houses that were made non-compliant. And they took because there were so few, they took a house lot by house lot approach. And for example, if something was in the riparian zone, they said the buffer, you could extend your building further away from the resource, but not further into the resource. And so they gave people some freedom of movement. And this came to light because the rule was that you could expand by 30% of your existing structure. But for some of the smaller structures in town, that was not a very big size. And this was a good way to really make sure that people's best interests and property rights were being respected while using updated data. So I'm really happy with how it came out. Do I have a motion to accept this as amended?
So moved.
I'll second.
And we have a motion by Josh and a second by Joe. Do we have any further discussion?
Just, I think, I agree with you. I think they did a good job. I think they took into consideration the concerns we heard.
Yeah.
And so I think this addresses what we heard.
And I think it shows the process working.
Yep,
you know.
I agree.
The process of a resident who came with comment, and then quickly, I think it was the next meeting, we had that on the agenda and got that moving.
And
so
the big
good.
discussion about this was using the best scientifically available data. And so someone was able to get some new, updated information, and we were able to use it. And I think this is great. All right, all in favor of the motion? Any opposition? Seeing none, that passes. All righty. I don't know if you're clearing your throat because you have something to say, or do you have a
No,
okay.
I have a sore throat.
I just was opening my mouth to say something. I was like, oh boy, did I say something wrong?
No, don't worry, I'll let you know.
Oh, I know. Alrighty. Here we have the draft battery energy storage system standards. This is really comprehensive. It's been developed by our legal counsel. It's been commented on by our town planner. It has also gone through review by the planning board, and public feedback has been received, both written and expressed at their public hearing, which was held last week. One thing that I think is really cool about this is it turns out we actually have some subject matter expertise here in Durham. We have residents who have either worked on permitting or approval or not approval of these projects, but also residents who have installed projects like these, so they could just provide some feedback as to what they're seeing as business standards and construction standards. So I think that this was a really good, well laid out ordinance that's been developed, that's included a lot of great public comment. Some of the big concerns I heard from the planning board were visuals, not making sure that any sort of a project like this that was being considered was not visible to people from a residential standpoint. I think that this addresses that. And there was also the sound concern, and I'm trying to find the noise. It talks
45 and 50 dB, I think is what.
And that, I think, aligns with our
55,
and I think
55
that
and
already
45.
aligns with our normal sound ordinance in town.
Yeah.
So the point of these is to just say, while we're going to recommend adopting contract zoning, which we're about to talk about in a minute, this is a baseline set of standards that you would expect things to be met at from a technical standpoint. So that would be a minimum. So talking about your size classification, tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. This is set up so it's saying that tier 1 small scale residential and commercial storage systems that have an aggregate energy capacity of less than 1/2 of a megawatt, and if a room or enclosed area consisting of only a single storage technology, those classifies as tier 1. The intent here is to break out so people who have individual storage capacity at their home, just for themselves and not for a grid scale or utility scale, would not be subject to the same level of permitting as larger ones. And then tier 2 is a greater than 1/2 megawatt but less than 1 megawatt and comprised of more than one storage battery technology in a room or enclosed area. Again, that's breaking that out because some of the feedback we receive from people in the community is, I produce electricity on my own property. I would need more than 1/2 megawatt to be to maintain that, and they shouldn't have to go through as an onerous process. And then tier 3 is anything over that 1 megawatt hour, and that's where you're getting into more than one storage battery technology in a room or enclosed area. So it's getting larger. These general requirements are really technical. I know that these were pulled from another municipality that has a really comprehensive plan here, highlighted here. Tier 1 battery in under 5.74. Tier 1 battery energy storage systems are allowed by all rights in all zoning districts subject to applicable provisions of the Maine Uniform Building and Energy Code. That's those small users. Tier 2 are projects that are located outside a building are subject to applicable provisions of the Maine Uniform Energy Code and other applicable codes and the site plan review requirements of Article 8. So that's saying tier 2 is the site plan review, a lower threshold of permitting than tier 3. And then tier 3, the recommendation here is that tier 3 battery energy storage systems are subject to this ordinance and require approval through a contract zoning agreement in the zoning district identified in table of land uses in section 3.1. In addition, tier 3 BESS must undergo site plan review pursuant to Article 8, and contract zoning approval shall apply only to tier 3 BESS. Tier 1 and Tier 2 battery energy storage systems are not subject to contract zoning requirements and shall be permitted and regulated in accordance with the application provision in this ordinance. Tier 3 BESS shall meet the following minimum requirements, which shall not be reduced or made less restrictive by the terms of contract zoning. This is the only place where I have a little bit of concern. So Tier 1 and Tier 2 do not have to go through contract zoning. They are allowed because they're for self-consumption. Tier 3 does have to go through contract zoning. I'm going to try to avoid getting too much into the details of contract zoning because we're talking about that next. But contract zoning as a mechanism that allows the board and the town to negotiate a contract for a project that falls outside of normal standards or normal zoning requirements for the town to then receive a specific benefit for that. So if someone wants to put a project someplace and they go through contract zoning for BESS, you may have to say we need things like water supply or economic development if it's going to be a large impact on our tax, large reduction on our tax, and if that's going to have reduction on our federal and state aid for schools and stuff like that. The line which shall not be reduced or made less restrictive, I think, provides a little
Where are you?
The top of page 2.
the highlighted section on top of page 2.
Yeah, where does it say that?
Under tier 3 BESS, it says shall meet the following minimum requirements, which shall not be reduced or made less restrictive by the terms of contract zoning agreement.
Yeah.
And so I find that line to be a little problematic because in order to best represent the town interest, I think we need to be able to have every negotiating tool available. And that all being said, ultimately the decision is made by a town vote of town citizens. So the town then has the opportunity, if a negotiation takes place, to accept or reject the terms of that negotiation. And the reason I bring that up is I think specifically of the noise issue. Noise is a problem if it's right next to the school. It might not be a problem if it's a half mile from the nearest paved road and it's slightly higher than we allow, but no one can hear it because you can't hear the noise near any residence. And that might be the opportunity to have a discussion where we could potentially propose a contract zoning agreement that allows for someone to be a little louder, knowing that we're getting a very large benefit. Some of the comments I saw out of the planning board were, well, if that's an instance, have them erect large sound dampening walls to prevent the sound from escaping. I see that as potentially a larger impact to the resources than allowing a little bit louder noise in some remote area. I also just think that we want to give flexibility to the community when there's this agreement being developed. And the only reason I'm comfortable in making the suggestion we take out that shall not be reduced or made less restrictive is because it is the town citizens who vote for final approval, not the select board, not the planning board, not the town manager. The town can decide, do we think it's valuable to adjust this criteria to this degree for this project at this location? And so that's why I just want to have a conversation to see what you all think, because some of the budget, the planning board was kind of split on this, and they didn't take a vote. They said to me, well, you hear what we're saying, go talk about it, you know.
Can I just, yeah, I just want, there's two different draft sections in front of us. One's 5.7, right, and the other's 5.8. And they're pretty much the same thing. There's some differences. But which one are we,
What's going on here?
So,
there are some differences between
George,
the two.
so one went to the planning board, and then George updated it from the planning board.
So this is the updated version,
Right.
which doesn't have that language in it.
But I'm just acknowledging that the planning board kept that in, yeah.
No,
But I see what you're
I'm
saying,
just
yeah.
trying to figure out which one is.
So, Joe, we were both at that meeting.
Mhm.
I feel like the newer draft that the planning board was looking at did not include that language. And they reverted back to their original draft, which did include that language, to send to us to have a conversation about it. Is that what you recall?
My understanding from what I saw at that meeting was that they were looking at a recommendation that did include the language, and they were saying they were wishy-washy on it and wanted us to make a decision.
When I say did include the language, I'm saying their new draft that they were looking at did not include the shall not reduce whatever, right? Did not include that. They chose to go back to the draft that does include the shall not reduce and send that draft to us to look at. They, right? Is that
Yeah.
what you're saying? Okay.
That's my understanding.
That's my understanding also.
And
so,
which is why you're bringing it up.
which is
for
why
discussion.
I'm bringing it up for discussion, because I would rather see us go with this 5.8 version over 5.7 for the reasons I previously stated.
Does that help, Josh? Is that?
Yeah, no,
But that's a good.
I was just trying to make sure I was clear in my head where each of these was coming from, because they're slightly different.
Right.
And I will say, I agree with you, because we're voting on it, as a town, and we're having the recommendations. I think if the town, if it's something that's important to the town, the town's people, if it's in that area, so
Yeah,
I'm okay not having that language in.
yeah.
Me too.
Joe?
Yeah, I'd rather see the language stay in there and keep to our noise ordinances as they are. Noise ordinances are created to, ensure people's, hearing, long-term hearing and other interference to normal activities are met for, for both health and safety reasons. When you then say you're gonna plot one of these somewhere that's near some houses, forget the school for a second. That's important to make sure your noise levels are within the limits that the town's, I'll say, lived with forever, for as long as, I was on the planning board. Been 20 years at least. I know we haven't touched those dB levels. So, I mean, if they have to put up a noise limiting fence as part of the project, then yeah, they should be doing that. The tree buffer may not stop all of it. So whether it be containment around the units themselves or some other mitigating factor, but You know, my hearing is gone because of noise like that hum of electronic gear. I wear hearing aids because of that hum, because in the early days of my industry, we didn't wear noise protection. So shame on us, right? But those limits are there for a very proven reasoning, and I'd be kind of against taking it out of the base requirement for anyone to meet anywhere in town, around residences, schools, wherever. You know, based on all what industry has come up with as what safe levels of noise are for people, and if it's above those levels, then you need to wear hearing protection. So that, to me, is unfair for anyone. And having that, I'll say that one resident or two residents come and vote their, you know, and voice their concern at a town-wide meeting, when you know, the town could be set to receive, I'll say, a lot of money for one of these facilities in town, then, you know, their voices wouldn't be heard, no pun intended. So I'd rather have the safeguard in there, and if we want to ask the town to reduce the noise limitations on a project that wouldn't go through as a result, well, then maybe we go ask that question at that point in time. Do we do we allow them to go above for that project, not the other way around?
So with the proposed one version, we would not be allowed to ask the town to allow them to go above that.
You can ask the town anything, right?
No, under this proposed version, contract zoning says you would not be allowed to ask to go above, whereas the other version you would be allowed to ask. And so I used the noise example just because it's one that came off the top of my head, but like another example could be if there's a buffering requirement, and it says, well, you need a 50-foot buffer. But they're like, well, we're proposing putting this right against the edge of the transmission line. And if you want us to put a 50-foot buffer, we now need to move it 50 feet closer to the road so we can put plant a buffer between here and the transmission line. That's something that the town might say, well, we don't mind if it's up against the transmission line. Or if someone says, well, we don't have a 50-foot buffer option, but we're going to put it in the bottom of a defunct 25-acre gravel pit, do we really need to go in and plant trees around there? And so I'm just saying, for all these reasons, just to go with the one that does allow some flexibility if the town ultimately gives permission. I'm not saying axe the noise recommendation. I'm saying get rid of this line that says, minimum requirements shall not be reduced or made less restrictive by terms of contract zoning. I'm saying give the town that option to potentially make an exception if the project is the right fit for the area and those sorts of things. That's my suggestion. But I hear what you're saying about health concerns, you know.
I have something that I'd just like to add, and so I agree with both of you. Big surprise. You know, the thing about a buffer up against the power line, or the thing about a gravel pit. You know, I think that those are perfect examples of why this sentence should not live here. When it comes to the noise situation, I do agree with Joe, but something
Joe?
Tom.
Okay.
But something that I would like to add is that my daycare, when my kids are out on the playground, cannot meet those noise requirements. They can't. But one of the ways that they addressed that at the planning board, because you know my neighbors were very concerned about that, was that they implemented the noise had to be at whatever distance from the property line. They put those parameters around it, and I had to meet those conditions. And so I respect that, right? But even a daycare can't meet those requirements. And so maybe what happens is that when it's reviewed, and you know, we do a thing where the noise from that property line has to be mitigated somehow to make that happen. But the 45, 55, and we're talking about best, right? But again, a 12-child daycare can't
So,
meet those
to-
requirements.
This still requires even with the version that that allows you to negotiate different minimum, it requires an acoustic study to be provided to determine the noise and the impact. Because like to your point, if it's a quarter mile from the property boundary, and at that property boundary the noise is 0, but at the center of the project the noise is 10 decibels higher than it's supposed to be, I have a mitigated concern about that as opposed to, because you could say, if this project meets the maximum, but it sits 2 feet from my neighbor's house, that's not necessarily a good project either, even though it meets the standard. And so I'm not saying anything against the noise standard. I'm just saying I think that we should have, as a community, the most tools available for our negotiation, and that does include, you could say this needs to be twice as quiet because of where it is too. So that's where I'm thinking on it. But I hear your point, because like you said, if you got kids running around, that's too loud for that standard.
I mean, if this is not negating the noise requirements by
No.
removing the sentence, I guess I'm okay.
Yeah.
What if you just, what if you kept that sentence, but
That
added
wa-
something like,
That's the one
without
thing that
the-
bothers me
Yeah.
about this.
The noi-
About
yeah, the noise,
Noise
yeah.
has been my thing from the beginning,
Yeah.
is that these are noisy, and it's a different type of frequency than the kids in the playground or our kids at the daycare. It's a
Yeah, I know what you mean. I used to work
different
under
noise.
transmission lines, and it's that low hum
that
all
hum.
day
Yep.
long.
No, it's that.
What were you gonna say,
what if
Josh?
you change, if you added,
Yeah.
which shall not be reduced or made less restrictive by the terms of a contract zoning agreement absent good cause? And that way, if there's a good reason why to make that change,
Yep.
I think that's a good point,
That-
because then
that-
that's
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
cover it, yeah, yeah.
kind of addresses your
That
concern, I
would,
think.
that would address my
And it's
concern.
pretty simple.
Yeah.
And just so that we're covering the bases, would that also deal with like the buffer?
It would cover all-
That would
That would
cover everything.
all the, yeah.
Yeah,
That would
and
cover
so
it.
I think that we're vocalizing that. I think that we're vocalizing. We would anticipate that good clause provision
So that's all
would
right,
be
that's all right.
implied, but by spelling that out,
I was gonna make some more people.
I think it's important. So what we would need to do here is adopt version 5.8, but amend it to include the line.
Wait, we didn't go through the rest of it.
I'm
though.
saying if we wanted to add it in here, we would have to adopt version 5.8 and amend it to include the line of the tier 3 best shall meet the following and shall not be reduced, less restricted by terms of contract zoning absent good cause. So I've marked that as for us to come back to that in case we don't have it, but we gotta go through our other edits first. Other than that, I think it's dynamite. I think it's it's dynamite. It has a approval from the planner, the planning board, and the legal counsel, and so I'm cool with it. Are you stretching or?
No, I'm trying to get your attention. So, my thing is that, my brain might just not be working, but it refers to contract zoning in this ordinance.
Yep.
If contract zoning doesn't pass, this directly references contract zoning.
Then you can't have.
Then you
the
can't have
best.
a tier 3 best.
Got it. Okay.
The planning board brought that up because it's like what it's saying here is you need to go through contract zoning. If you do tier 3, well, our town doesn't allow contract zoning at this time, and you don't get a tier 3 best. But this allows people who like have a business and want to put their own battery storage there to be able to do it for themselves.
Does that eliminate that though, that they can't just make an application and go through site plan review?
Yeah, because you have to go through it, we don't allow it, so you can't do it.
Yeah, that's.
It's like a ban on the tier 3.
But it's set up so then if a community ever decided to say we do want to accept contract zoning here, and we could get feedback from
And we're
Kristen.
sure about that, right?
So let's put it this way: Kristen will be here at our next meeting.
Yes.
If we are airtight on everything else for this, we can table that and just ask her that simple legal question next meeting. Does that work for folks? but I wanna make sure we're airtight on everything else, so we can, I know we don't do anything in 5 minutes, and I'm mostly to blame for that, but if we could do this one in 5 minutes next meeting, so we get the heavy lifted out of the way here, but I think that's a good point, Heather.
I just want to reconfirm that tier 1 and 2 criteria number meets the needs of the public comment we had. Like,
Yeah.
At first, the number was too low for people.
Yeah, cause the current,
Just, it is good.
yeah, it
good.
is.
You don't
Yeah.
have to explain it. Okay.
What's this other highlight, the tier 2 battery energy storage? I think I'm on page 2. I am. And it's highlighted, that tier 2 battery energy storage system, no, it's something like that. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. Located outside the building are subject to applicable provisions of the main. Why is that there and highlighted?
Because it adds the site plan review and the other standards in section 5.7, section 5.86, depending on which one we adopt.
yeah, so
It's just a different
It-
review from the tier 1.
if you do a side-by-side comparison,
Yeah, I
in
can't figure
in
out.
5.84 it says, battery energy storage system, tier 2, located outside a building or subject to the applicable provisions of the Uniform Tax Code and other applicable codes and site plan review requirements of Article 8, 5.86. This says, applicable provisions and other applicable codes, site plan review, Article 8, and standard section 5.76, not 5.8.
That's the only difference?
That's the only difference I'm reading between these two.
Oh,
But again, we can have George come on the 25th as well to specify.
That's the difference.
Yeah,
okay, okay.
It just, I think it's highlighted just to show that there's a different
Okay.
review from tier 1.
Got it, okay. So if
I
we
think
can
that
just
I think
have-
that highlight was FYI, not hey, this is different.
Okay, so if we can just have Kristen chime in on, I don't want to end up in a situation where,
That we've been trying to avoid.
yes, and as long as that is what you're saying it is, then I'm good.
So I move that we table revision to draft best standards until February 25th, 2025, where at our next meeting when we can get feedback from our legal attorney, or town attorney, sorry. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. All right, so the motion on the table is just table this until, motion on the table is the table. This until next meeting.
Okay.
All in favor? Any opposition? Seeing none?
Can I ask a process question?
Sure.
So if this doesn't pass at town meeting,
If the best standards don't pass?
and contract, whatever, and our moratorium runs out, then what?
If it doesn't pass, we could try to extend the moratorium for 6 months. But my understanding is after that moratorium would be extended 6 months, and then it just goes away, and you are saying site plan review.
Okay, we need to make sure that people understand that and that that's really, really clear.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Back to Deb's point of us trying to eliminate risk in town. Not passing something exposes us to a lot of risk. Because someone could put it right in their front yard,
right.
on
I
the
just
side
think-
of,
I think that's
on the
really,
side of
really-
Patriot Ave, or right on Stackpole Road,
I think
maybe.
it's really important for people to understand that. Okay,
Yep.
moving on.
Moving on. Contract zoning. Alrighty. This is all brand new. I think that this has been really well covered by the planning board, the town planner. And this is a reflection of everything we've already discussed. There's no changes to this from what we approved and originally sent to the town, planning board. And so I don't feel the need to rehash that entire discussion that we had the last time, because we did that hard work before. We're now incorporating the public comment. There was no public comment submitted about this, either online or to the planning board or in person. We received a couple public comment a while ago before this was even proposed. Someone said you should consider contract zoning. That was some public comment we had received. So unless anyone has any other questions about this, I'm fine with this as written.
I disagree with one statement that you
Okay.
made. I do feel like the planning board received public comment that we need to do a better job of making sure that this information is like right out in front of everybody. Because the person that made the public comment felt like, this was difficult to find, navigate, you know, trying to pay attention and having a hard time to do that. Now, whether that's, I mean, I know the link is in our agenda. We're having the meetings, but I'm
No,
on board
I
for
think,
all of that.
I heard it as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that if we now are saying this is what's locked in, we're ready to have this live very publicly.
Yeah.
And so I think that if we vote on to accept this as written tonight, that this needs to be on the website like this week, you know, personally. And I think that there should right now just be a tab on the website that says, you know, draft ordinances or whatever. And so it's right there front and center because we're about to have a public hearing in March. I want everyone not have to search, not have to look hard, just get on the website and have it all right there. Very easy to find.
And I don't think that the comment was made because they were, I think they were saying that as when people show up at town meeting and they don't have the information, it's more like, look how long it took us to get resource protection through because people didn't feel educated about it, right? I just think if we want these things to pass, we have an obligation to make sure that residents are educated before.
And that's what I heard from a comment too. And like the person said, once after they reached out, they were directed. They were able to go find the information, but they said, you know, I had to sift through a 3-hour meeting, and then I had to do all these sorts of things to get to that information. And so I had some thoughts on that. Like we can also just start using our YouTube channel, and you can put in like timestamps so someone knows. You just click best conversation, and it automatically brings you to the beginning of that. So I think that that's something we can do a little bit better job of. But what I'm hearing is us just saying, hey, go watch the 2-3 hour meetings we did 2 months ago. Isn't really the answer, because he said, well, we're just not going to do that. And then if you show up and I don't understand it, I'm going to vote no.
Well, on selected topics, we can include, like you did sometime a few months ago, in the Friday news blast, have one slide by the chair of the select board, just explaining what, on unselected topics, you know,
Yeah.
explaining something. And even prior to a town meeting, I mean, I don't know if that's something we'd want to use the text.gov for, say, hey, you know, just a blurb subject matter,
Well,
hit this link,
that's-
and there you go to some information.
Yeah, we can put a link right to this.
I think that it would be great if we just do every single, like everything shy of sending out pigeons to notify for this, because we know that public hearing on this is going to be March 12th by the planning board. Generally, the planning board does make space for us to be there to answer questions, like not about policy, but about questions that people might have.
Yeah.
If that's going to be in the newspapers, that's going to be on the website. That should be in every news blast between now and then, and I think that we should be texting it out 2 weeks in advance, 1 week in advance, and the day of.
I'm not trying to make this last longer. Do you have something you want to say first?
Go ahead.
There was a lot, I'm just reading this. This says large battery storage or solar energy system. There was a lot of discussion around the solar sizing. What, is that included in this? We didn't talk about that.
It's listed here, conditional zoning for solar on large scale required for projects with a surface area of greater than 175,000 square feet. And since we're gonna revisit this on
Okay.
February 25th, I just need to do some math because I think that I personally am comfortable with that being reflective of a 20-acre project, whereas the proposal was just for anything 10 acres or larger, and that's small. And so
I just didn't want
gotta
to
do some
not
math.
have a
Yeah.
conversation about
I gotta
that,
do
because I
some.
do feel like that was something we did not discuss last time.
I gotta do some math on that because there was a lot of confusion about the square footage of panels versus the megawatts, because we go by square footage of panels, not megawatts. And so the conversation that they had, I guess we're still technically in the table in motion, so we can have this discussion a little bit, but the conversation that they had was, the original proposal was it had to go to contract zoning as a solar project if it was gonna be 10 acres of ground impact or more. And a lot of public feedback and input from the Conservation Commission and input from some members of the budget, of the planning board, was that 10-acre threshold should raise to 20-acre threshold. And that was because when the original solar ordinance went through, they said, this is fairly restrictive on small projects in Durham, but not nearly restrictive enough on big projects. And so the intent I think by including this as the solar was to avoid like what Green is running into, where there's a 600-acre project going in. So this is saying if it's over 20 acres, 20 acres or larger, we should go through contract zoning because that has big impacts. So we can pick that up. But it's just, I gotta do the math to figure out.
We just, I
That square
just
footage.
bring it up because we talked about BEST, but this does also have solar implications,
that's
so
what
I
we
didn't,
discussed.
Yeah.
I don't wanna overlook that part of it.
Yeah.
The one thing I noticed, and it's because every time I flip to it when I was looking at it
Yeah.
on my screen and flipping through here, there was a comment we were discussing with the town attorney about Board of Selectmen versus Select Board, and it's still in here as Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
So
Because she said she wanted to keep it consistent with our existing ordinance
Yeah. Until we do codification.
until we do codification. Thank you for pointing
But that's
that
a good
out.
thing to point out.
I'm okay.
So the motion is to table this until the 25th, but we've got most of our conversation out of the way now, so it should be quick. Do I have a vote on the motion of tabling it? All in favor? Any opposition? Cool.
That's all that.
Bill me now or bill me later, right, Jeff?
So don't put it on the website yet until.
No, we need to,
Gotcha.
we need to fix that.
We have a second on that?
Joe second, it's a Josh Joe. Motion second.
25th, okay.
Okay. 25th is gonna be a busy meeting because we're gonna go over historic district, updates. Last week I extended an invite to the Historic District Commission to have a representative, present. I was told that they were going to discuss it and see if anyone was available to come and meet with us. I haven't heard back. I received, a notice of resignation from the chair of that committee today, or the Historic District Commission today, effective the 14th. And so I don't know who they're intending on sending. If I don't hear anything after the 14th, I will reach out again to see who they're sending. But the intent there is to have them present to ask questions of the legal counsel as we finish wrapping up that ordinance. And then if we have the lawyer here, we ask her all other lawyerly questions, so. That's it for old business. We can move into new business, unless anyone had any other old business that I missed. Okay. I wanted to bring this up, I know I flagged it for you all online already, moving our March 11th meeting to March 4th. The if we didn't, March 11th, if we wrapped up everything we needed for the town plan, gave the approval, gave the thumbs up on ordinance language and all those sorts of stuff, the feedback I received is that would be too quick of a turnaround to get it printed in time. And so if we move the March 11th meeting to March 4th, all things that need to be done to be aligned, the town annual, the award-winning town report would be done on March 4th as opposed to March 11th. So I'm gonna make a motion to reschedule the March 11th meeting to March 4th.
Second.
Do we have any additional discussion on that?
I will not be here on the
Okay.
4th.
Okay,
Just as a heads up.
all right.
I have something I can't.
Yeah, no, you don't have to explain what,
No,
we
that's
totally
fine.
hear
Just
you.
so you know.
Are you comfortable with us
I'm comfortable with you just moving forward.
moving that for
Yeah.
those?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm comfortable.
awesome.
I'm just letting you know that.
Perfect.
I've already got it.
Well, not perfect that you're missing, but you're totally. Fine. You keep catching me off guard. Heather.
Sorry,
You're
I
clearing-
know, I'm sorry.
So my teachers used to do that to me all the time. So.
No, really?
Yeah, you hard to believe, but I was a talkative student. So the motion is to move the meeting from March 11th to March 4th. All in favor of the motion? Any opposition? Seeing none. All right, Jerry, can you give us a little update here on this personal property abatement? What do we
Yeah, so we started looking in our system for taxes that will never be collected. These are personal
Don't like
property
those.
taxes that you have, and the reason why these won't be collected is because they're no longer in business. So it's just a formality, really. I mean, you're under Title 36, Section 841, you're allowed to abate these, and if you sign off on these, we'll get them out of the system, and we'll,
Yep.
like, we won't ever collect them, which we won't.
Yeah. Do I have a motion to accept the personal property tax abatement as presented?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, do we have any additional discussion? It looks like one of them is for the total of $3,032.93, and the other is for $117.68. Some of these are, in both cases, they're, one case is going as far back as 2008, and in the other as far back as 2022.
Back as far as 2009.
Sorry, 2009.
Yeah.
All right, seeing no further discussion, do I have,
I'm
sorry.
sorry, I want to ask, did you say these businesses no longer
In business.
in business in Durham, but are the people not in Durham? So
You gotta write them off.
no other choice but to write them off? Can't make them pay, no matter where they live?
Right.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
This comes out of the abatement line? Is that
No.
what? Okay.
No, it just gives us the tax to go in there and just write it off and.
Okay.
so,
get it
yeah,
out.
this is just saying that this amount no one's going to pursue that, amount when we start addressing any unpaid taxes and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
it gets it
Okay.
right off the books.
Yeah, so it's not like we're losing, there's not a dollar amount that's coming out of our budget anywhere.
No.
We're just no longer going to attempt to pursue these dollars.
And had we, do we know, had we attempted to collect these taxes all these years? Or this account just like sat dormant, the person never paid, and years go by and?
That's, I
You- I
can't
mean, you
answer
would
to
know,
what,
right.
right, last year, but in talking to the assessor and going through, as we're starting to, look at these back taxes.
Yeah.
This stuck out. So we just said, well, we can take care of this one right away.
Yeah.
There are others in there, but there's a little bit more investigation that needs to happen and phone calls.
I mean-
But this one is very straightforward.
To me, it looks like there was a principal amount that wasn't collected and interest accumulated.
Do we need to be in a
Do we need to be in Board of Assessors for this,
No, no,
for the abatements?
well, I don't believe so, because as elected officials, you can write
This is
this
just,
off.
this is
Yeah.
just the
You're
write-off.
just writing
Okay,
this
no, I'm
off.
good with that. All right.
Good question, though.
Yep, no, all right.
All right, any other additional discussion? All in favor of the motion? Any opposition? Seeing none?
And is there a copy in the consent agenda? So there's a official copy. You have
In
it.
the folder? Okay.
Good. Super.
Alrighty. Next order of business is fee schedule, disposition burial fee adjustment. Jerry, you wanna?
Yeah, so the state came out, February 1st of 2025 that they raised their cost of dispositions by $5. So we have to adjust our fee schedule by $5
What was it?
to bury people.
No, but what was the fee originally?
20.
So
$20?
It was 20. And
Yeah, it's
now
more expensive than that.
No.
No, I'm saying like to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Alright, well, so do I,
This comes to, do you have anything you want to add or
No,
anything?
yeah, this is just a burial permit fee.
oh, I thought you
Oh,
said
the
to
permit.
bury. I was like, no, the
Yeah,
fee,
yeah.
okay, I was
Right.
like,
It's a disposition permit.
okay.
So we just have to update our fee schedule to reflect it, so
Yep,
folks should.
okay, do I have a motion to update the fee?
So moved.
I'll second.
Josh, Joe combo, good combo today. Any additional discussion? Alright, all in favor? Any opposition? Seeing none? Do we have something to sign here?
That's
For that, no, for that,
No.
okay, perfect.
When we're done with the budget, can we put the fee schedule back on the agenda?
Absolutely. I think you requested that
I
a couple
did.
months ago, I didn't forget.
Okay.
Alright, we're gonna move into manager report unless there's any other new business. Does anyone have any new business to bring up? Manager report,
Right.
Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I may have mentioned this last meeting, but it was really kind of hectic and towards the end, but the Eureka doors are now installed. They work great.
Can I interject really quick?
Yeah.
Because two of the members who were doing the installation at the Eureka Center are on the fire department, there was a chimney fire while they were installing, and it was the record-breaking response time, especially by someone on foot, because they were literally working on the doors. The call came in, they ran across, and the house is saved. But I just thought it was a funny little thing, because like, boom, 30-second response time. So I
they were
think
up there
we got to
quick.
remind Chief when he tells us how quick the response time is. There's an outlier in there.
We also have the generator at the town office that's been installed.
Big wins.
Yeah, waiting for a good storm to test it out.
Well, this weekend might be. Well, you know, since we installed it, we won't lose power for another 2 years now, right?
We are doing our 24 audit right now as we speak. The audit has been in the town office the last couple of days, and we're going through that process. So it seems going pretty good,
Yep, very good.
going real good. The only other thing that I want to really talk about, kind of dedicate my whole manager report, is to town staff. I mean, town staff does an amazing job. And we'll start with Public Works. I mean, the storms that they have had to go through is unbelievable. I mean, just picture yourself Thursday, if it snows, getting in your car, storming, drive to Boston. See how stressful that might be. And I mean, they're doing this day in, day out. Now jump in a truck that's $200,000 with knobs down here that you got to control your material, levers you got to push to get the wing. I mean, it's a lot of work, and they've done a fantastic job. And the fire department, you know, I don't know if it was the holidays or if things just ebb and flow with emergency medical services, but he's had to go to a few calls that are somewhat disturbing, and he just does a really nice job. And the folks in the town office, they're just, where I sit, I can kind of hear what goes on. Their customer service skills are just top notch. I mean, the joyful talk between the residents and the town staff is really, really good. They do an awesome job, so I'm really proud of them. I mean, I know some folks may not value them as much as some others, but I value them tremendously, and they're just a joy to work with, and, you know, hats off to them. I feel like I'm part of their team. You know, they're just we just have a really good bunch of people, and, you know, I get out and about and talk to other town managers in other towns, and we're doing really well. So I'm proud to be on their team. They
That's
do a
awesome.
great job.
And I know I can speak on behalf of the board here that we value you and we value them a lot. We get a lot of good feedback, so.
Yeah,
Why do you think I always come over early? I want to hang out with this town staff, you know?
they're just really good. They've been through a lot in the last couple of years. You know,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
town office became unstable a little bit, and they've stuck it out. They got to deal with me. I'm not always that easy, but they're just tremendous.
That's awesome.
So,
Well, thanks for taking time to acknowledge them, Jerry.
yeah.
Board member reports. I'll start off. Like I said, invited the Durham Historic District Commission to our next meeting. I just want to flag, next meeting will be a big one. So just mentally, let's all prepare ourselves for that, because it's kind of one of the last big lifts before town meeting. But I'm really proud of everything we've accomplished so far, and I think we're going to be able to culminate that at next meeting and show that. I also, like I said, I received that notification of the chair of the Durham Historic District Commission resigning as of February 14th. And so to check in with that committee after to see what their status is on chair position, and provide any assistance that we might need to provide if they need guidance or anything like that. Other than that, I don't have any. As you can see, I've been at the budget committee the last couple weeks. I appreciate folks being able to make it. My intent is to be at every one of their meetings and to speak as much as they want. And so I just want to let you all know, I do my best to just make sure that I'm giving facts and figures, and I don't want anyone to think I'm trying to speak for the board in its entirety without without checking with you all. So I just want you all to know that you're free to check me if it ever comes across that you feel like I'm speaking out of line or erroneously or anything like that. Like, I got thick skin, I can take it. So, all right, Josh, do you have anything?
No.
Nope. Joe, Tom,
Nope, I'm all set, thank you.
Heather, fee schedule after budget.
No, I just want to say a couple of things. Number one, you know, we have had a lot of meetings, planning board, all the ordinance work, the budget committee, and I feel like the vibe among the boards and the committees is so much more collaborative than it has been in past years. And I think that's important to speak about, and I really appreciate that because, you know, I come from this position of like Team Durham, and I really appreciate like everybody, town staff, the boards, the committees, the commissions, really trying to work together as a team for the best interest of the residents. So I feel like that, you know, that we're moving towards that, and it's better than it's ever been, I think. And that when there are disagreements or there are differences of opinion, it's all been very respectful for the most part. And so I just think that that's worth calling out. There was one other thing that I was going to say. Shoot. Maybe you have to go to Debbie. And then
Well, we can come back to you. Deb, I'm going to jump back in front of you real quick.
Yep.
Speaking of Team Durham, it made me think.
Oh, I remember.
Deb and do you want to go now?
No, it's fine. Go.
Deb and I attended that Circle of Chairs with GP Cog a couple weeks ago, and the discussion at that meeting was really property tax, and they kind of went around all the communities and asked us how we were feeling about taxes, and provided us with a lot of data about the regional tax rates and stuff like that. A lot of really good conversation. I think that when we're there's a lot of towns that are similar to us in size, but sometimes in the past I think we've said, well, that's for the big city folks, or I think the Scarborough town manager referred to themselves as, we think of them as the fat cats who have all the money. And I said, it's not what we're saying, that's what you're saying. But either way, sometimes I feel like we don't always think that we can discern as much information from them, but I felt it was a really helpful meeting, and I'll make sure this gets on the website. I already gave a copy of the budget committee, and to those of you who were at the the budget committee meeting last week, it gave us a really good set of data on our median property tax bill, and showing here in Durham that as of 2022, the median property tax bill was $3,049, which is very low, a low compared to the region of GP Cog and compared to some of the larger and even the smaller municipalities in parts of Androscoggin County. And then they also went through for each one of these towns and determined the percentage of the median property tax bill for a median income household. And so we have one of the lowest in the region at the median property tax bill for the median income household is 2.93% of their wages, which is very low compared to when we look at like Falmouth where it's like 5%, Cumberland where it's 5%, and Freeport where it's 4.5%. And so the reason I brought it up is because we also start talking this time of year about mill rates. And sometimes I hear people say, well, look at this town, the mill rate's much lower. Well, valuations are much higher. So in Durham, we have a median, as of 2022, median tax bill of $3,049. In the hometown of our town planner, Falmouth, their bill, median tax bill is $7,500. In Freeport, the median tax bill is almost $5,200. So while they might have a different mill rate, the cost of a 2-bedroom, 2,000 square foot house is much higher there. And so this is not to say that this gives us an excuse to just increase taxes or anything like that, but I think it was really good information. And the other thing I think, and let Debbie jump in after to see if there's anything you heard, but there's a lot of really good effort going forward from organizations like MMA and GP Cog to work with the state, address taxes at the state legislature and push for hoping to increase the amount of percentage that we can get back from homestead exemptions, increase the homestead exemption amount for people, and address tax implications for seniors, and make sure we're maintaining good revenue sharing from the state. So we were able to really have a good brainstorming session to go help and try to do action items in Augusta that will have implications here in Durham. So I just wanted to share that that was a really good meeting, and I will now give the board member report over to Debbie, and feel free to add anything if I missed anything from what we saw together
No, that was a
there.
good summary, it was a good session. Just want to mention that the Solid Waste Committee meeting was canceled last night because of the conflict with the Budget Committee meeting, but they've agreed to, I saw the notes back and forth, Jerry, to the second Monday of every month. And then there'll be a new chair selected as the chair resigned, but is staying on the committee. So that's good. We need to pick up the momentum in that group. And there's a lot of opportunity to improve in that area. I also wanted to take a moment to commend Joe and his the Budget Committee, I don't want to say performance, but he did good. I mean, that was my first time sitting through anything like that, and I was thinking, man, I'm glad I'm not Joe. But he did
That's not the
good,
first time
and
you
he
thought
was
that, no.
recognized by the chair of the committee as well, of, knowing the numbers, being able to explain it well. It's not an easy thing, and I think you did a good job and represented
Thanks, Deb.
the work that was done on the budget. Good. And Jerry, you as well as Mark too, contributing to the discussion, I thought was good. And Heather's good comments. But I did want to make a comment from the Budget Committee. One of the concerns was about being able to have more visibility of the 10-year capital plan. So I'd like to propose that we actually, wherever that is, get it posted on the website so people can actually look at it, and then make a commitment, as we do go buy these, whatever it is we're buying, that we include some communication of that. Of course, not only in our select board data, which we'll be voting or doing whatever there, but in our Friday news blast. We can say, hey, the new truck is going to be purchased in a month, or whatever it is. But I think that was a valid concern that was discussed. And that's it. Thank you.
I think that was a really good point, Deb, because I think that those things that we think are the most important, getting them to the front of that page, even with the capital improvement plan being something that we're going to talk about every single year, if it has its own tab or own heading or whatever on the website and just lives right there, I think that would be a really good way to just make it nice and easy to find, and people can see what's there. Because a lot of work went into that, and I want to also make sure we're showing off that really good work. And then we can do a better job of, if we know that there's a request for a capital expenditure coming before us, of making sure maybe we do a text for that, a text notification, so people can go give comments or something like that, just to make sure people know that there's no illusion of trying to do anything behind a curtain here. It's all public facing. So I
And
agree.
I think if we don't have the capital improvement team,
CMP,
committee now, then we should take all that off the website.
Yeah.
Does that not even exist anymore with the new 10-year plan? So we can remove all of that,
Yeah.
and kind of clean that up a little bit.
I agree.
But I think those are good comments that came out at the Budget Committee.
Can I say that one thing that I forgot, but now
Yes.
I remember? So there was a situation this past weekend
Oh, yeah.
where
Speaking of plow
snow
trucks.
was accidentally plowed into the access at Runaround Pond, and a
Mhm.
resident posted on that was very upset, and I suggested reaching out to the road commissioner, because I felt like it was probably just a misunderstanding that could have very easily have been cleared up by a simple conversation. And there was a lot happening on that post, and so I took it upon myself to reach out to the road commissioner. And it made it very clear, I'm not directing your work, I'm simply asking the question to understand what's the deal, is there no place to put the snow, was that an accident, whatever. And come to find out, exactly as I thought, it was completely unintentional. We had a new on-call driver that plowed the snow into that area, not realizing the access needed to remain. A resident had gone out and tried to fix it. Calvin immediately addressed, or the public works director immediately addressed it, said that if their access wasn't good enough, he would go down there with the loader that day to clear that up. And I wanted to reiterate, and another resident actually said on that post, the town staff is always so willing to problem solve, and to address resident concerns if they know about them. And so it's very easy, you know, to draw attention to a situation on that Facebook page and, you know, that type of stuff, but it was immediately addressed by that very easy conversation asking what happened and, you know, what can we do about it? And so I think that, you know, just goes to speak to the fact that the town staff is working for the residents, and reaching out directly to them is a way that things can just be done efficiently instead of all of this, you know.
Drama.
Well, I was trying not to say that word, but yeah. And that was what I just wanted to say, so. Anyway, I
Should I
appreciate
not have
that.
said
I
that?
appreciate that Cal
You're
got back to me
fine.
on the weekend.
Yeah.
We didn't need to do that, so.
No.
And I just want to say, I think it's really important, and I'm really happy that you both went to the Chairs in the Circle at GPCOG, because, I mean, they do a lot of good stuff, and it's good to kind of get an overview of what's really going on, because property taxes are an issue, not just in Durham, but statewide, and there's all kinds of talk. I had a Zoom meeting with all the southern Maine city managers, and they're struggling. And
Yep,
so-
everybody, yep.
some of them actually are like, well, the school should send their own tax bill, the county should send their own tax bill.
Yeah. Here.
Just because the municipality gets hammered with, is
Yeah.
we're the one
Yes.
responsible for collecting property
Yeah.
taxes, so it's an issue.
We felt I know when we left, we felt like we were better off than about 2/3 of the other people
Yeah.
who were expressing their challenges. Because I don't envy some of the,
And I think,
you know, 3 years straight at 9% tax increase that some of the local communities are absorbing.
and breaking that out in our budget like we did this year, I think will help show where the taxes are really
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, the
The
tax
visual's
dollars
good
thing.
for people.
Absolutely,
That's a
you know,
really
and so-
important thing that you did there.
Absolutely.
We do have to have executive session.
Yep,
so
I
just
know.
wanna-
So any other board member reports? Okay, no. We need to approve the consent agenda, but there is I want to go into an executive session to discuss item A, appointment for the ag committee to discuss discuss the person who was filled out the application. So how does that, do we want to make it easier? Do we want to just approve everything else? So Jessica can go home, shut it down, and then we will just finish the notes on executive session?
Yep,
Okay.
yeah, that'd be fun.
So I'm gonna make a motion to approve the minutes from January 28th, 2025 as written. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Any opposition? Seeing none. And then I'll make a motion to assign and approve the AP warrant for February 11th, 2025. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Seeing none. I'm doing it this way so I don't have to remember to write down 3 motions. And then our next upcoming meetings in town news, Historic District Commission meeting is February 13th, 2025 at the Eureka Center at 6. Budget Committee meeting is February 24th, 2025 at the Fire Station at 6:30. And Select Board meeting is February 25th, 2025 at the Fire Station at 6:30. And I now will take a motion to go into executive session. I can't remember the number, pursuant to
I think it's 605A.
605A.
Personnel
Yeah.
matters.
Personnel matter, 605A. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Second, any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Can we, sorry.
It won't take 12 minutes.
Okay.
All right,
You can take us off there.
we're gonna wait till we're off there, but yeah. Pull the plug. All right.
So they said.